Namaste. India recently opted out of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or RECP, which has been signed by 15 nations, which will include 40% of the world trade and 45% of world population. This is slated to be bigger than the European Union and will be the largest trade bloc in the world in future. Are we missing a big opportunity? In today's episode of Logistically Speaking, I will help you understand how these kind of agreements impact the prosperity of the nation so that you can draw your own conclusion. Not very long ago, India was the largest shipbuilding nation in the world. In fact, India was one of the biggest trading nations from first AD, controlling 27% of world's GDP and exporting to the entire world until colonization happened. History also shows evidence of old Roman Empire in first AD facing shortage of gold as trade with India increased. This was because India's key export like pepper and other spices were paid in gold. In a barrier-free world, India even imported Italian wine, Greek olive oil, silk, and part of which was even used to trade between Asia and Europe. All these transactions resulted in amassing gold reserve in all the small kingdoms of India, and part of which still remain in religious places or have been inherited through generations. Now, coming back to the present scenario, India walked away from RECP treaty, maintaining that this will result in an increase of import rather than export. But if you closely examine, the growth of all these export-oriented countries happened primarily due to the openness to trade and because they allowed import without any control. Let's take the example of China. One of the first steps China took towards developing their economy was to provide land, labor, and regulation-free support to manufacturers around the world so that they could come manufacture their product at reduced cost and export them. They allowed restriction-free import of raw material, component, and parts. And in the next stage, they learned how to make these components cheaper and offered to the manufacturers locally, which increased the country's revenue. So the growth in exports started happening because imports were encouraged by them. And to facilitate this, they removed all trade barriers, signed multiple free trade agreements with other countries, and the result is here for all to see. Protectionism has never helped any nation, let alone India. The growth India has seen over the last 30 years is due to the opening up of the economy and globalization. And if we go back to a protected world, we would be regressing to an era of low quality product and production standards, which will result in our export going further down. If we try to protect our industry against competition artificially, then we are talking about reverting to an era of ambassador cars and non-performing monopolies like MTNL and Air India, which will eventually undoing years of progress what we had. India cannot survive on service export alone. In fact, no country can. There is a need to encourage manufacturing, which will bring in jobs, development, and prosperity. The importance of RECP for the economy of a country is evident from the fact that even traditional rivals like China and Japan have put aside their political difference to come together on this treaty. With India's inclusion, the planned market would have provided access to some 3 billion people. Imagine the possibility. If we sell a single product like footwear to say around 20% of the population in this trade bloc, we would be selling around 600 million pairs every year. So, increasing the scope of manufacturing will offer potential to employ our workforce of say approximately 500 million, and especially since there is a limit to the number of people whom we can employ in service export jobs. Things like rule of country of origin moving away will not just help China, but every country in the agreement stand to benefit, especially in the present situation like module manufacturing, where final assembly happens in different countries. Country like India with cheap labor costs stand to gain in this scenario. A recent study of iPhone manufacturing showed Chinese contribution to the factory cost is only 3.6%. where the rest came in from 7 countries, with the US and Japan receiving 29% approximately of the factory cost of an iPhone, thereby contributing on the job, development and prosperity for their respective economies. To summarize, the prosperity of our nation has always been dependent on exports and ease of trade. We suffered every time we were cut off from the outside world. It's time that we learned that protectionism is detrimental to growth and that prosperity is dependent on our facilitating ease of trade and eliminating all barriers and controls. Thank you for watching this video. I look forward for your views on this topic. See you next week. Thank you.